Good afternoon, Abbotsford residents. I'm Mr. Pelican. I'm running for the mayor of Abbotsford. And you know, my number one thing is to bring the RCMP in, mayor or no mayor, to bring them into Abbotsford on the organized crime. This cannot continue. Today I want to outline how smart the Mission RCMP were when I went to them on attempted murder on my life. I want to outline that and how they played a major part in helping Abbotsford homeowners, the threats by Abbotsford police officers, the chief himself, and how much power Henry was wielding in this town in establishments. This, I want you to have a good look, is Vicky Hopes. Vicky Hopes was instrumental with this newspaper and her friends to fool and try to blindside the law. She was playing a major part. She figured that she would fool them. She knew Henry had the Abbotsford police, and she knew she could. But Vicky Hopes was never aware of that I went over to the RCMP. And the RCMP knew this. So let me explain this to Vicky Hopes, to Ken, to the newspaper. When you shield from the law knows when this newspaper's done it, you've been paid off to block the law. So let me explain Vicky Hopes. Vicky Hopes in her rag newspaper, and Ken and the people that work here know Dave Sidhu is the city council, and they knew his land was lifted on Tracy Road with Andy Sidhu, and they know he sat on the decisions. And Vicky Hopes was told not to run the story and that. Vicky Hopes knew that Henry was the mayor, and his son is Darren Brown. He's a proving officer in the city. He took all the information and went and created himself as a company under Blue Sky Solutions, and he's got most of the job sites through Abbotsford, and council and him were friends, and Henry had him up in his house. Vicky Hopes knew that too. Right, Vicky Hopes? Vicky Hopes knew that the homeowners up and behind Lou's Bar and Grill, people on Ed's EDA, that means is that his riding association, were witnessing their homes, and Vicky Hopes figured she was going to hold that story to help Henry Brown. Vicky Hopes knew council and everything. Vicky Hopes was aware of that when I ran in the election, and she was going to scandal me at the city auditorium to load Ross Siemens. Vicky Hopes figured she was fooling everybody with her newspaper. You don't want to play when the law's involved. That you don't want to do, and you don't want to block the law for a mob. And Vicky Hopes figured she was going to do that. Vicky Hopes knows that Amric Moran is on the police board where Mark Warkentine. She knows Mark Warkentine's an LLP, and she knew he sat on the decision of Dave Sidhu's, which is insider trading. She knew council ran their signs on Rob Funk. She knew Henry was partners with Rob Funk. She knows Devin Roy. The great Vicky Hopes and Ken. They're going to fool the law. Vicky Hopes is going to. The law knew when I talked to the RCMP mission how much has she been paid. They knew that right away. They know good newspapers don't take sides of politicians, and they run it. But Vicky Hopes was not aware of how many witnesses and politicians were in behind and helping Mr. Pelican and Abbotsford residents. Vicky Hopes was aware of Patricia Dreesen, which is running for city council, and she owns Perfect Sense, and she sits on Archway, and she helped them waive their taxes. This is a great Vicky Hopes. Don't write a story. And we don't want the general public. We don't want chaos. Two little rags of Abbotsford figured they were going to shut it down. Dave Sidhu's Capriccio newspaper with Andy Sidhu, and Vicky Hopes figured they had 90%. I went on the social media, but before I did that, I went to the RCMP, knowing Henry's brother was on the police board, Erwin Brown, knowing Vicky Hopes knew that Henry's son, Darren Brown, was in front of Ross the night of the decision when Henry stepped off because he was in conflict of interest. Vicky Hopes knew that Henry and his son were partners on lands and everything. The great Vicky Hopes figured she was going to fool the law with Ken. Nothing would come their way. The RCMP mission, so did Surrey when I sat with them, said don't waste your time on that two-bit hustler or her thing. We know exactly what her angle is and what she did. She's been rewarded. Nobody looks away from a victim, Vicky Hopes, that I could tell you. She knew that what Henry done, and she figured she wasn't going to come out and write the story and talk to the victims because of her friendship with Henry Brown. and she knew that they blocked and there was election. I want to pass a special message on to the Abbotsford newspaper, Ken, and everybody who works here in Vicky Hopes. You're fucking with the law. The Abbotsford police have no say over this one. And the Abbotsford police that stalked me and threatened me have no say. There's going to be so many agents and stuff that come through here that climb through every one of your guys' orifices in bank accounts. You're going to pray, and you're going to pray hard on your bloody knees that you never ever did this and covered this, Vicky Hopes. I'm adamant. I am adamant of everything that I've been through with Abbotsford residents, and I told you the EDA of Ed's Fast with me, now Suk Mangel's EDA. Some of Bruce Bamman's very close friends witnessed it all. And I told you John Rustad in my house. I told you Gurpreet Rai. I told you Eric Nival. I made it clear that even Manji Sohi was there. I told you Juddy Sidhu and everywhere. Henry Brown's elite ring in the establishments, from the Chamber of Commerce, Greg Toes, to everything he was controlling, was to rig the elections and then reward people like this. It was a great RCMP, a mission that stood up to help me and help Abbotsford residents. With their help, their insight, and their knowledge, people like Vicky Hopes wasn't fooling anybody. Vicky Hopes was fooling Vicky Hopes. The RCMP made sure, Mr. Pelican, we could search their bank accounts and we could search everything. When people do this, and they do this on a level of this, they have lost their morals, their ethics, and their principles. And people like this in society are only fooling themselves. I'm running for the mayor, Vicky Hopes. I tell you, you need to promote Ross Siemens. You need to fool everybody you can. But I'm going to tell you, Vicky Hopes, when I walked into the Mission RCMP, they knew what your angle was and exactly why you were doing it. They knew why Ken was involved. They put it together. The rest of it was easy, Vicky Hopes. When Darren Brown told me, the former pro editor Rick Rakes being Henry's best friend, and Rick's wife being Henry's wife's best friend, and then tied it together. Abbotsford needs the RCMP. So people like this never figure that they can get away with fooling the law. Vicky Hopes knew the Mackenzie Bog, and it's still there. She knew Barrowtown Waterworks now, with the money gone missing and Jake's Contracting doing the jobs. Vicky Hopes, who are you fooling? I want to make sure that Vicky Hopes never holds a glass of champagne up again. When Darren Brown showed me, when Henry threatened Tyler Olson and said, you write one story about me or help anybody, I will put you on your bloody belly and bankrupt you. Meaning he would pull the city's contacts, the city advertising, and everything he could do. I would have took that offer, because today, Vicky Hopes, your stories on the Abbotsford News and what Henry did and his son did would be bestsellers. You were giving the choice, and you took the choice of following the devil. There is so many politicians, so many people here that can see right through you. And you can see it from Bruce Bamman. You can see it from all the people that play part. Vicky Hopes has even went as far as make sure she don't promote any other candidates that Henry don't like. And you can see that with MLA Rianne Gasper. You can see that with MLA Bruce Bamman. And you can see that. Now Corky leaned into the establishment a bit with Ross. Vicky, she'll start promoting it. This was about people's lives, people being left for dead, people being threatened by the law that's supposed to protect them. This was about rigging elections and stealing taxpayers' money. But Vicky Hopes, you and Ken have to understand one thing. This was also about blocking the law. And that there, no one gets away with it. No one. Henry fooled you and made you believe that that Abbotsford shit that he controlled with his friends was going to make sure that this would never get out. Henry's son opened the door. And I don't gotta explain that every newspaper reporter knows Henry's son is Darren Braun, and when he was in front of Ross and lifting all the jobs and everything. I want to make sure people like Vicky Hopes and Ken and reporters and everything get to face the general public Not the shield that there's somebody in the freedom of press, because this wasn't even about press no more. When somebody's left for dead, and homeowners and seniors and families and everything. I want to make sure Vicky hopes the law doesn't look away, Vicky hopes. The RCMP assured me a mission when they figured this out right away. They knew this right away, that Henry owned this rag and he owned that other rag, and that's why they were blocking these major stories of these insiders in the city rigging job sites. And then Vicky Hopes knew Ross's gas station was knocked down and tugged to mission. Vicky Hopes, don't look out for Mr. Pelican and Abbotsford homeowners. I constantly do what Simon Gibson did. He said, I think the RCMP got everybody's phones tapped. Simon is paranoid as a city council knowing that. And he knows the RCMP know this is a massive organized crime involving a community police department at the top and political politicians lifting jobs from massive construction lifts. They're not gonna look away, Vicky Hopes. I'm live, Abbotsford, here at the Abbotsford News, Abbotsford, British Columbia, Vicky Hopes.